Hi, in this tutorial I will turn this into this in Unity 6. Some features are also available in earlier versions, so make sure to stay with me until the end. In this scene everything is kept simple. The materials are basic with no complex calculations involved. I have a camera, and the volume currently disabled. There's basic directional light with no additional details applied. A reflection probe is used to capture the light reflections. Lastly, the environment contains all the models visible in the scene. To add a volume, select the game object, navigate to the volume, and add a global volume. Now let's rename it to realistic volume. The volume mode is set to global. You can switch it to local to specify a particular support distance. In this scenario, you will need to add a collider to determine the range of the volume. Here I need to either select a profile from my existing pre-made profiles or create a new one. By clicking on it, I can find the path to the profile. Now let's open the project window. The profile is located here, and I can assign it to any volume. Now I can add various attributes and effects to this profile. I need to click Add Override to add effects from the list of available post-processings. Let's begin by adding the exposure effect. There is no specific order required for adding effects. It increases the exposure of the scene, making the brighter areas stand out more prominently. When I enable it in fixed mode, the exposure remains constant across the entire scene. I can adjust the intensity using this field. Alternatively, I can choose the automatic. It will automatically adjust exposure according to the camera. For instance, bright areas will be enhanced while the dark areas will become even darker. I won't go into detail. Instead, I plan to create separate videos that explain each effect in depth if you're interested. Each field has its own unique effect. For instance, you can set the range of the exposure by adjusting these limits. But I don't see any noticeable differences at the moment, so we should adjust the other attributes as well. Okay, let's add the other effects. The next effect we'll add is fog or atmosphere, as it is essential for enhancing every scene. This effect comes with many attributes, and I've covered in detail in the tutorial here. I will go over some essential attributes now. Let's activate the effect using the state. As you can see, an ambient atmosphere has been added. By decreasing the fog attenuation, you can create a denser and more pronounced fog. Adjusting the base height allows you to create a fog at a higher elevation. Alright, let's select a suitable value for the attenuation as well. I need to enable volumetric fog in order to create a physics-based fog. At this point, we have added God rays or sun shafts along with a local fog volume. You can observe the light shafts created by the volumetric fog. We also have option to choose a color for the volumetric fog. Lastly, the tier setting will determine the quality of the fog. That looks fantastic. Now let's move on to adding the next effect. Now let's search for the ambient occlusion. I found it. This comes with various attributes, but we will focus on some essentials. The first attribute is ray tracing. Ray tracing provides a more impactful effect, but I choose not to enable it due to performance considerations. To enable ray tracing support, navigate to Edit and select Project Settings. Certain areas in the scene exhibit shadow leakage. Ambient occlusion can resolve this issue. For instance, in these areas, let's enable intensity and increase its value. As you can see, ambient shadows have been introduced to the scene. Let's reposition the camera and make careful adjustments. A value of 4 works well. Direct occlusion creates this effect in areas where direct light is present. For example, in these specific areas. Or in this area, a value close to 1 is effective. The radius controls how AO is distributed across the scene. Higher values are more powerful but reduce realism. This value works well. Next we have the quality, and selecting a high value will yield the best results. The step count affects the quality of the effect, but increasing it usually does not result in significant changes. The scene looks significantly different compared to its earlier state. Now let's add another important effect. In the lighting settings, let's enable screen space global illumination. I've covered all these attributes in detail for global illumination in the tutorial here. Both this effect and ambient occlusion are turned off by default, so you'll need to enable them in the project settings. You need to activate both of these options. Let's enable the shade option. You can now observe noticeable differences in the shadowed areas. The next attribute is the tracing method. Ray matching is the option for software-based tracing. You have the option to switch to hardware tracing instead. To achieve the best quality, set the tier to high and leave the others unchanged. The next effect adjusts the intensity of the global illumination. Let's add the indirect lighting controller. Increasing the indirect diffuse value will enhance the intensity of the indirect lighting. Let's input a value of 1.1. Alright, I think we have covered global illumination. Now let's move on to the next effect. Navigate to the post-processing and add a bloom effect, which enhances the brightness. The first setting is tier or quality. Now let's boost the intensity. Higher values will cause the scene to look more blurred. Let's select a value that is close to 0. The threshold determines how widely the bloom is distributed. With 0 we have broadest distribution. The scatter adds an additional range of brightness. This value works well. Next we can choose the color, ideally one with a warm sunlight tone. Let's skip other attributes like lens dirt and additional effects. Let me know in the comments if you'd like more tutorials on this effect. The next key effect in the post-processing section is chromatic aberration. This effect adds lens distortion around the edges of the camera frame. All we need to do is increase the intensity. Using a low value can create a more natural effect. Next, set the quality to high. Great, the next effect we'll add related to the camera is a vignette. This effect will darken the borders, and you have various attributes to fine-tune the details. First, let's increase the intensity. Smoothness will create a softer effect, but it will also expand the range of the effect. Setting the roundness to 0 results in a square shape. Lastly, feel free to adjust the color according to your preferences. Now let's make the adjustments and see the differences. The most significant effect we'll focus on is the visual environment. This setting will define the environment, sky and atmosphere method. Now let's enable the sky type. You'll find a list of skies. For instance, in the HDRP sky you can assign a specific sky texture. In this scene I prefer a physically based sky, as it will simulate the sky according to the surrounding environment. It's so beautiful. This attribute allows you to add clouds, and it will also slightly modify the lighting. There are additional attributes related to the sky that I'll explain in detail in another tutorial. Lastly, I need just one more effect to fine-tune the scene's color. In the post-processing, you'll find various effects for adjusting the scene color. This is one to use is located at the bottom. The white balance. We can adjust the temperature with the first attribute. This will modify the color tone, making it warmer or cooler. The tint refers to the actual color of the scene. Let's select the appropriate values. Adjusting the scene color is not necessary. However, I need it here. Alright, this is good. Let's compare the scene both with and without the volume. Okay, this is another world. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And feel free to share your ideas and questions in the comments.